The earth does not remember you. It does not remember the empires you build, the monuments you carve, the machines you launch into orbit. To the planet, your tallest skyscraper is a grain of sand. Your longest history is a fleeting spark. What feels eternal to us is nothing more than a whisper to time. And every 10,000 years, that whisper is silenced. Imagine a clock you cannot see, ticking beneath your feet. A cycle older than memory, older than myth. At the end of each rotation, the slate is wiped clean. Forests reclaim the cities. Oceans rise and devour the coastlines. Fire rains down, or ice seals the world in silence. And when it is over, when the earth has finished its reset, the story begins again. A few survivors emerge, carrying scraps of knowledge, starting the long climb once more. It is comforting to think of history as progress, a ladder climbing ever upward. But what if it is not a ladder at all? What if it is a wheel? A wheel that spins and spins, returning us again and again to the beginning. We are not the first to reach this height. We are not the only ones to believe we were destined to last forever. We are only the latest, standing on ground that has buried countless forgotten worlds. Think of your own life. The photographs you take, the words you write, the structures you leave behind. You believe they will last. Yet if your home were abandoned tomorrow, nature would begin its quiet conquest within weeks. Mold would crawl across the walls. Vines would twist through broken windows. In 50 years, the roof would collapse. In 500, the forest would cover it entirely. In 5,000, no trace would remain. If you returned 10,000 years from now, you would find only dirt, stone, and trees. Now magnify that fate to a city, to a nation, to an entire civilization. That is how fragile permanence truly is. The earth moves in rhythms we barely comprehend. Our planet tilts, wobbles, drifts in its orbit. These subtle shifts, called Milankovitch cycles, shape the climate on scales of tens of thousands of years. Ice spreads. Ice retreats. Oceans rise, then fall. The last ice age ended 11,700 years ago. The glaciers melted, rivers swelled, fertile valleys opened. It was in that narrow window that humanity began to build. We farmed, settled, invented writing, raised monuments. Everything we call civilization fits neatly into this interglacial summer. But summers do not last. If the cycle holds, another winter waits. Look backward. The ruins of Jericho date to 9,000 years ago. The Great Pyramids are half that age. Our entire technological story spans only a fraction of one cycle. And yet our species has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. 30 cycles could have come and gone before us. 30 opportunities for other civilizations to rise, thrive, and fall into dust. You may ask, where is the proof? But that question assumes the earth would preserve it for us. It would not. Stone erodes. Steel rusts. Concrete crumbles. Plastics break into dust and scatter. Continents drift, submerging whole coastlines. In 10,000 years, a modern city would leave less trace than a fossil shell pressed into rock. A vanished civilization could stand behind us, and all we would inherit are whispers. And we do have whispers. On a hilltop in Turkey lies Göbekli Tepe, a temple of massive carved pillars, 11,600 years old. Older than Stonehenge. Older than the pyramids. Built at the very moment the Ice Age ended. The carvings are intricate, the alignments astronomical. Too advanced, many argue, for the hunter-gatherers of that age. Was it a first spark of civilization, or the echo of something earlier, passed down through survivors of a reset? Look to Egypt. The Sphinx, gazing across the sands, carries erosion scars that some geologists believe were carved not by wind, but by water. Heavy rains, long before the Sahara became desert. If true, it would mean the Sphinx predates the pharaohs by thousands of years, a relic of a forgotten chapter. Look to the seas. The Piri Reis map, drawn in the 16th century, appears to depict Antarctica as it might have been before the ice, its coastlines bare. How could such knowledge exist in an age of sails and compasses, unless it was copied from maps far older than history records? And look to the myths we carry in our bones. Nearly every culture tells of a great flood. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of waters swallowing the world. The Hebrew Bible tells of Noah's Ark. Hindu tradition tells of Manu, warned of rising seas. Across the Americas, across Polynesia, across Africa, the story repeats. The world drowned, humanity nearly erased, a handful saved to begin again. Are these only stories, or are they memories? Memories of the last reset, when melting ice raised the oceans by 400 feet and erased entire coastlines from the map. The pattern does not stop there. The Earth has endured catastrophe after catastrophe. 66 million years ago, an asteroid ended the reign of the dinosaurs. 252 million years ago, the Great Dying smothered 90% of life. Even in recent ages, eruptions have blackened skies, impacts have scarred continents, magnetic poles have flipped, weakening the shield that guards us from the sun. Each event would be devastating to a fragile civilization. Each event could reset the wheel. If an advanced people once stood where we stand now, the earth would have swallowed their ruins. The seas would have risen, the forests would have grown, the mountains would have eroded. What remains might be only fragments, a temple too advanced for its age, a myth too consistent to dismiss, a device like the Antikythera mechanism, a clockwork computer that should not have existed in the hands of ancient Greeks. Relics without context, puzzles without solutions, clues scattered through the ages. So here we are on borrowed time, in a fragile summer between storms. We live as though permanence is ours, as though progress is inevitable. Yet the wheel turns, whether we notice or not. The last reset was 11,700 years ago. 10,000 years, 11,000 years, the difference is nothing to the Earth. It may already be counting down. And so the question is not whether the Earth resets. It always has. The question is whether we will survive the next turning of the wheel. If the Earth does reset, the implications are staggering. The first is simple, and perhaps the most terrifying. Our achievements are not permanent. We think of space travel, nuclear power, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, as proof that we are unique. But if the cycle is real, then everything we build may be no more enduring than a sandcastle before the tide. Imagine standing at the foot of a skyscraper, gazing up at its steel bones, its glass skin shimmering in the sun. Now imagine returning 10,000 years later. The steel has rusted, the glass shattered, the stone eroded. The forest has swallowed the streets. A city of millions reduced to a mound of earth, indistinguishable from the hill beside it. And we tell ourselves, this is progress, this is permanent. But permanence is a word for gods, not for man. The second implication is more unsettling still. If civilizations have risen before, if they have climbed the ladder of knowledge only to fall when the wheel turned, then perhaps we are not innovators at all. Perhaps we are inheritors. Think of a child who finds fragments of a book, scraps of paper torn from its spine. They cannot read the whole story, but they piece together what they can. That is humanity, picking up fragments left in myth, in stone, in memory, building upon knowledge that may not have been ours to begin with. The mysteries of ancient engineering, stones so large they defy our modern cranes, alignments so precise they rival observatories, may not be miracles of primitive ingenuity. They may be fingerprints of an earlier age, a civilization erased, yet echoing faintly through time. The third consequence pushes deeper into the shadows. If the Earth erases civilizations with such efficiency, then what we call prehistory may be misnamed. It is not the time before history. It is the time before our history. Think of the oceans, vast and unknowable. During the Ice Age, sea levels were 400 feet lower. Entire landscapes now drowned beneath the waves were once dry land. Where we now find only ocean floor, there may once have been cities, harbors, empires. The rise of the seas was a global flood, swallowing the memory of that world. And we walk the beaches, unaware of the ruins that may lie just beyond the surf, buried beneath silt and silence. The fourth revelation sharpens the question: what causes the reset? We assume catastrophe must come from beyond us, asteroids, volcanoes, cosmic chance. But what if it comes from within? A magnetic reversal stripping our skies of protection. a sudden tilt in climate plunging us back into glacial cold. Even the Earth's own heartbeat, tectonic shifts releasing storms of fire and ash, capable of choking entire continents. Each possibility is real, recorded in the scars of the Earth. And each one is inevitable. Not if, only when. The fifth consequence turns the mirror on ourselves. If earlier civilizations existed, they too might have looked to the stars, sent signals into the dark, dreamed of immortality. What if our search for extraterrestrial intelligence has failed not because we are alone, but because every civilization is silenced by the same cycle? Imagine the galaxy filled with voices, each rising, each erased by its own reset before it could shout across the void. The silence of the cosmos may not be absence. It may be evidence of the same wheel, grinding across countless worlds. And finally, the most disturbing thought of all, what if the reset is not only natural but necessary? What if it is part of the Earth's design, a safeguard written into the fabric of life? Civilizations rise, push too far, burn too hot. They threaten the balance of the planet. And so the wheel turns, the slate is cleared, and the process begins again. In this view, we are not victims of chance. We are participants in a system that keeps the Earth alive by erasing us when we grow too bold. Pause here and feel the weight of it. Imagine a cycle not just of nature, but of intention. We may be living inside a mechanism larger than ourselves, a planetary reset that keeps the story of life from running off the rails. And if that is true, then everything we build is temporary by design. So ask yourself, where are we now on the wheel? The last reset came with the end of the Ice Age, 11,700 years ago. Seas rose, climates shifted, animals vanished, human societies scattered, and then regathered. In that aftermath, we became who we are. But the clock does not stop. 11,000 years is already more than one cycle. Are we overdue? Is the next reset already unfolding around us? Look at the signs. Glaciers retreating at a pace not seen since the end of the Ice Age. Rising seas swallowing islands and coastlines. Wildfires consuming forests. Storms growing stronger. We tell ourselves it is our doing, a consequence of industry. But what if it is not only us? What if it is the wheel turning, the Earth preparing once more to sweep the board clean? We may be accelerating the process, but the process itself may be inevitable. And here is the cliff's edge. If resets happen every 10,000 years, then our survival depends on this moment. If we cannot break the cycle, if we cannot outrun the tide, then our skyscrapers, our networks, our dreams of permanence will fall as surely as the temples of forgotten ages. But if we can endure, if we can leap across the cycle, preserving memory through the storm, then we may be the first to break the wheel. Imagine what it would mean to carry knowledge across a reset. To emerge not as children rebuilding fire, but as guardians of memory, bearing the wisdom of all who came before. That may be the true test of civilization, not what we build in calm summers, but what we preserve in the face of inevitable winter. The stakes, then, are not simply survival. They are continuity. They are whether we will be remembered, or whether we will be erased like those before us. Whether we will leave echoes in myth, or whether we will find a way to speak across the turning of the wheel. And if you find these possibilities as haunting as I do, if you wonder where the next fork in this story may lead, then walk with me further. Because the deeper we go, the stranger the paths become. If the Earth truly resets every 10,000 years, then the future of humanity divides into paths. Each path is a branch on the tree of possibility, stretching out before us, and each carries its own destiny. One path is silence. The reset comes, swift and merciless, and we vanish like all the civilizations before us. The seas rise, the fires spread, the skies darken, and the record of our existence dissolves into dust. What little survives is distorted in the retelling. A crumbled monument mistaken for a mountain. A scrap of machinery mistaken for stone. A myth of flying ships remembered as chariots of fire. Thousands of years later, a new people dig into the ground and wonder who came before them, never suspecting that our skyscrapers once touched the clouds, or that our machines once reached the stars. This is the path of erasure, the the path where we are forgotten. Another path is memory. The reset comes, but fragments endure. Perhaps in hidden libraries sealed beneath mountains, or in digital vaults stored on the moon, or in coded stories passed down through generations. The survivors rebuild not as children, but as heirs, inheriting pieces of what we leave behind. Civilization returns faster, climbs higher, stumbles less. In this timeline, we are the ancestors of ourselves. We are the forgotten teachers of the future. Perhaps that is why myths echo across ages, because fragments of memory survived the last reset, disguised as legend, waiting for us to rediscover them. A third path is escape. The wheel turns, but we step off of it. Our rockets pierce the skies, and we scatter into space before the storm arrives. Earth resets, but colonies remain on Mars, on asteroids, perhaps in great ships between the stars. To them, Earth becomes a myth itself, the cradle that birthed them, the home that drowned, the world that could not be saved. In this timeline, the reset is not the end, but the moment of our expansion, when humanity ceases to be bound to one fragile planet. Yet this path carries its own dangers, for if resets are universal, if every world has its wheel, then perhaps we carry the cycle with us wherever we go. A fourth path is transformation. We do not flee, and we do not fall, we change. Imagine that faced with collapse, humanity sheds its fragile skin of flesh and bone. We upload ourselves into machines, into networks, into codes that can endure catastrophe. The seas can rise, the continents can shatter, the stars themselves can flare and fade, but our essence endures in new form. In this vision, the reset comes, but it cannot erase us. Humanity becomes more than biological, more than bound to cycles of climate and stone. But this too is a gamble, for in becoming something else, do we remain human, or do we become the architects of a new story entirely? A fifth path is confrontation. What if the reset is not blind nature but design? What if the earth itself, or something older within it, enforces the cycle? Then survival means rebellion. To endure, we must confront the mechanism, resist the tide, break the wheel. It is a dangerous path, for how do you fight a cycle written into the orbit of a planet, into the fabric of geology, into the pulse of time itself? But perhaps civilizations before us tried. Perhaps they reached the brink, struggled against it, and failed. Perhaps their ruins are warnings, their myths are messages. If so, the question is whether we will learn to succeed where they fell. Each path is a story. Each story branches into others, and all of them begin with a choice, to accept the wheel or to break it. Imagine the simplest scenario. We do nothing. We continue as we are. The seas rise higher. The storms grow stronger. Crops fail. Populations collapse. Nations fracture. The old world dissolves into chaos. Yet in pockets, survivors endure. They build small, they live simply, and in time they forget what came before. To their children, the ruins of our cities are mysteries. The satellites in the sky are wandering stars. In 1,000 years, stories are told of a great age when people flew in the heavens and spoke across oceans with invisible voices. But the stories fade into myth, and the cycle begins again. Or imagine a scenario where we prepare. We take the idea of a reset seriously. We bury libraries beneath the earth, storing the sum of our knowledge in vaults designed to last millennia. We seed satellites with records, scatter archives on the moon or Mars, hide memory in DNA, in crystals, in forms that may endure even the collapse of civilization. When the wheel turns, the survivors dig up these treasures and rebuild faster than before. They look upon our works not as myth, but as instruction. Our voices become the guidebooks of their new world. Perhaps we already live in such a timeline, and the monuments of the past were messages for us. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe and the pyramids are not mysteries, but lessons. And then there is the boldest scenario. We refuse to fall. We reach beyond Earth itself, planting humanity across the solar system. Colonies on Mars, cities beneath the ice of Europa, stations orbiting the asteroids. When the reset comes, Earth suffers, but humanity endures elsewhere. The cycle is broken not by resistance, but by expansion. In this future, The story of humanity is not tied to the fate of one planet. It is a constellation of worlds, resilient because it is many. The Earth becomes the cradle, yes, but no longer the cage. But even this future carries uncertainty. What if resets are not bound to Earth, but to civilizations themselves? What if the wheel is not geological, but existential? Civilizations rise, reach for the stars, create machines beyond their control, and collapse. The cycle may not be the Earth's, it may be intelligence's. If so, spreading to the stars only delays the reset, echoing across a larger canvas. We may break the Earth's cycle, only to discover the universe has its own. And so we return to the deepest question. If the wheel is real, why does it exist? Is it chance, the indifferent mathematics of orbits and tectonics? Or is it pattern, a law of nature, ensuring no species becomes eternal? Or is it something stranger still, a design woven into the planet, perhaps into life itself, ensuring constant renewal, constant rebirth? If the latter is true, then survival means more than endurance. It means evolution. It means transcending the pattern that holds us. Every path carries wonder. Every path carries risk. And at the fork of these paths we stand now. If the Earth resets every 10,000 years, then the story of humanity is not a straight line at all. It is a spiral, a wheel turning through the ages, carrying with it fragments of memory, fragments of loss. But if that is true, then the question becomes not only whether we can endure the next turning, but whether we can learn from it. Pause and think about what that means for you, for me, for anyone living now. We live as though our world is permanent, as though our children's children will inherit the same sky, the same seas, the same cities. But permanence is an illusion. A city is not eternal. A nation is not eternal. Even a species may not be eternal. What endures is memory, story, knowledge passed forward through the fire. Perhaps that is the true test of civilization. Not how tall we build our towers, or how far our rockets travel, but how much of ourselves we can carry across the storm. Can we protect wisdom long enough for it to light the way after the reset? Can we teach across time, across endings, across silence? Every ancient myth whispers of destruction and renewal. Floods that cleanse the earth. Fires that sweep the heavens. Cycles of ages, golden and dark, repeating without end. We dismiss them as metaphor, as the dreams of earlier people. But what if they are memory? What if myth itself is the message left for us by those who came before? A reminder that the wheel always turns, and that the survivors are those who learn to carry their stories across the darkness. And here, perhaps, lies the most important lesson. The reset, if it comes, does not only measure the strength of our machines or the scale of our cities. It measures the strength of our spirit, whether we are capable of unity in the face of collapse, whether we can set aside division and cling to what makes us human. For a reset does not erase only buildings, it tests empathy, cooperation, memory. If we fail those tests, we vanish, and the wheel turns again without us. But if we succeed, if we find a way to carry ourselves through the reset intact, then something extraordinary happens. We become the first civilization not to vanish, not to be erased. We become the bridge between cycles, the authors of a story longer than the wheel itself. We become more than survivors. We become stewards of time. Now consider this. Perhaps the reset has already begun. Perhaps the storms and fires and rising seas are not random events, but the first movements of the cycle. Perhaps we are living not in stability, but in the early chapters of collapse. If that is true, then what we do now will echo not just for our children, but for the civilizations that come after us. They will either look back and find silence, or they will find our voices waiting for them in the dark. And if this question stirs something in you, if you feel the pull of wonder at the thought of cycles and resets, then walk further with me. Because every question leads to another. Every fork opens into more, and together we can search the paths others may never see. For there is a deeper possibility still. What if the reset is not something that happens to us, but something we are meant to overcome? What if the very meaning of intelligence, of consciousness, of progress, is to learn how to escape the cycle? then the reset is not our doom, it is our test. A gauntlet we must pass to take our place among civilizations that endured beyond it. Perhaps that is why the stars are so silent. Perhaps the wheel is the filter, and few ever break free. Think of it this way. If the universe is infinite, civilizations should be everywhere. But we see none. Where are they? Perhaps most of them never pass the test. They rise, they burn, they fall, erased by their own cycles. If we can endure where others failed, then perhaps we will not only break Earth's reset, we will break the silence of the cosmos itself. And yet, even if we fail, even if the reset comes and wipes the slate clean, something of us will endure. Our stories will echo in myth. Our bones will whisper in stone. Our monuments will cast shadows long after their makers are forgotten. The wheel may erase us, but it cannot erase that we were here. And perhaps, just perhaps, the next civilization will find us and wonder at the same mystery. So let us end with a thought both humbling and magnificent. Imagine the night sky 100,000 years from now. A new people stand upon the earth. They look up, as we do, with questions burning in their minds. They wonder who they are, why they are here, whether they are alone. And somewhere, buried deep beneath the earth, or drifting among the stars, they find a message. A message from us, from you, from me. Whispering across the gulf of time, we were here. We faced the wheel. We dreamed of forever. Perhaps that is the only immortality there is. Not the survival of bodies, but the survival of story. And if we can pass that story forward, if we can leave even a fragment of ourselves for those who come after, then we will not have lived in vain. The reset will not be an ending, but a doorway. The wheel turns. The tide rises. The storm comes. But still we build. Still we dream. Still we reach. And that, in the end, may be what it means to be human.